So, this video was originally made before I had seen episode 8, but now we can't not discuss some of it. Because what was that? What did I just see? Obviously, spoilers ahead, so if you haven't caught up, click off now. I have very mixed feelings from this episode because yes, we finally saw the end of Jeremiah and Belly, and us Belly and Conrad truthers can finally get a moment of peace, but can we really? Because I feel like the journey to get here, dare I say, has almost been too dragged out. To the point I can't even root for Conrad right now. I mean, Conrad in this episode, this whole season, has been taking hit after hit, but this episode was the worst. I felt like this entire episode was the show trying to gaslight me into thinking Conrad is the problem. I couldn't stand that everyone was against him, minus Laurel, but I couldn't stand that he didn't just spill the tea about Jeremiah and Cabo, although that is very on brand for him not to destroy his brother's reputation like that, but it felt so intense and like my boy really couldn't catch a break. Thank God Susanna came back from the grave to pull in clutch for Conrad at the last second, because no one else was going to. Like the way my jaw hit the floor when the letter said, "Dear Conrad." I did see this coming though from the moment we saw Susanna writing the letters and her and Laurel dropping them, but to see the payoff was so wonderful. The end of Jeremiah and Belly was again somewhat nice to see, but I feel like I've been thrown around so much by this show that I didn't even feel good about it. Yes, Jeremiah absolutely sucks that even though he knew his own brother was in love with Belly, that he continued to rub it in Conrad's face every chance he got. Like, that's proper ugly of him. So I find it hard to have any sympathy for him in this situation, especially after he also noted how he knew that Belly and Conrad spent Christmas together, and instead of communicating any of his issues with her, he picked a fight instead and then cheated on her in Cabo with the same woman not once but twice. So it was all intentional. It is scary how manipulative he can be. Also, I am in the team that Conrad deserves better. I kind of just want him to go and build his own life outside of Belly and Jeremiah and the whole ordeal he has had to deal with. But because I've invested so much time into this show, I do want to see Belly and Conrad together, if that is what Conrad wants, which I guess we all know it is. Because yes, they left us on that nasty cliffhanger. Belly seeing Conrad at the airport and he doesn't know that they aren't married. He doesn't know. I fear my life as well because we are in uncharted waters. The next 3 episodes are a complete mystery. We don't have any visuals from them. The trailer has showed us everything up until this point. So what's going to happen next? Predictions. My delusional ass, just because this is a fictional show with only 3 episodes left, would love Conrad and Belly to ride off into the sunset together, that they go to Paris together, even though I know they won't. And hear me out, I get it. Belly definitely needs some solo personal growth, but I have a major bone to pick with the show. The fact that we have only seen Belly and Conrad together as a couple in the present day for like 1 scene is absolutely crazy, because the rest of their relationship has been in flashbacks only. And that's not acceptable, that I've had to sit through Belly and Jeremiah for way too long. That's why I'm saying I don't even care about character growth anymore, just give me Belly and Conrad. But yes, I know realistically Belly is either going to ignore the fact that she saw him and hop on the plane, or they will have a conversation and Conrad will tell her that she has to go to Paris because he has always put her first. Although one thing I will say is if Belly goes to Paris, which she will, and if they do a time jump, which I think they will, then I would be more down for Belly and Conrad to end up together because at least she has taken time for herself. Let me know what you all think. This was just a quick tangent before we get into the actual video essay. At least all of my thoughts and analysis still holds up, even with the recent episode in mind. But yeah, just know going into this analysis now that it was me prior seeing episode 8, so it was just discussions of the whole show up until episode 7, but now you have my thoughts on episode 8 and we can jump into the actual video.
Don't marry him. Be with me.
You will never be what Jer is to me.
What? What the fuck?
The way this scene made my blood boil, because my boy Conrad was taking hit after hit. It felt like we weren't getting a moment to breathe. I loved as well how this felt like a cinematic parallel to Gilmore Girls.
I don't know.
What are you doing? Living at your grandparents' place? Being in the DAR? No, Yale. Why did you drop out of Yale? Belly, your wedding's at a fucking country club. Who are you?
Who are you to even ask me that question?
Yes, I know. Belly's internal monologue in the book discusses how she has to say whatever she has to say to make Conrad go away, as it's too late now. She is getting married to Jeremiah tomorrow. It's kind of like the same situation audiences found themselves in with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We were really lacking a lot of the internal monologue that we had in the novel, which really allowed readers to see President Snow's true intentions. But anyways, I wanted to do a deep dive into the dynamic between these three characters, the sides of Team Jeremiah and Team Conrad, and then Belly. This is more of just a ramble video though, there's no deep research here. It's just my thoughts and feelings and conclusions of what we've seen thus far. Because we have seen enough of Jeremiah this season, let's start with Team Conrad. All the way back in season 1, Conrad was presented as Belly's one and only love. She was obsessed with him. He was the one for her. All she wanted was for his eye to catch hers and for them to fall deeply in love. It was a feeling she had had for him for years at this point. However, at this moment in time when we meet Conrad, he is mysterious, brooding, and perhaps a little edgy. He comes across as closed off, snarky, and unwilling to open up to those around him. We watch him navigate the summer in a very isolated way. Yes, at this point he is dating Nicole, but even within that relationship he seems far away, not totally in it. As a viewer in the first season, especially if you haven't read the book, at first you think Conrad needs to lighten up. Like, what's with this attitude of his? But then you see the weight he is carrying on his shoulders. His mother, Susanna, is terminally ill. He isn't supposed to know this. His own mother doesn't know that he knows this. And on top of this, he hasn't told anyone else as he doesn't want to burden them with this knowledge. Additionally, he even states that he feels that if he says it out loud, then it makes it true. And of course he doesn't want it to be true. He doesn't want to give it any power. So instead he has been bottling it up, pushing it as far down as possible. To make matters worse, this isn't the only secret he has been keeping. He also knows that his dad Adam cheated on his mum with his secretary Kaylee. Again, no one knows he knows. This constant need to bear all the weight on his own can be pinned down to the very fact that Conrad is the older brother. He believes and has been told his whole life that he needs to take care of the younger ones. That is his job. For instance, in the scene when Belly is drinking some of Victoria's margaritas and ends up getting too drunk, Adam holds Conrad personally responsible.
I didn't know she was drinking that much. You're the oldest. You're supposed to look out for the younger kids.
An article by the Pony Express discusses how eldest children are held to a much higher standard compared to their younger ones, having to be a strong leader and are pressured to not make mistakes or else their siblings will follow their lead, which can then lead to the child or teen in this case having to take on the role of a parent, having to grow up quicker at the expense of their own mental health in order to be a role model for their siblings. This inability for older siblings like Conrad to have room to breathe or make mistakes can be suffocating at times and even draining. They see their siblings being able to have more freedom. Brandy Smith, a licensed psychologist, found that older siblings have a persistent drive for perfection, which we see in seasons 1 and 2 with Conrad. He keeps a wall up so that no one can see him crack. For Belly and those around him, he hates the idea of appearing weak. It is his worst nightmare to be perceived that way. Therefore, by remaining brooding and emotionless, he is able to control his own narrative. He only lets people see the persona he has created. However, all of this comes at a cost. Characters like Conrad who put these walls up tend to find themselves pushed into a corner sooner rather than later. For instance, with Conrad in season 1 and 2, not only with his panic attacks from carrying all of this weight on his shoulders, but also within his grief. The way Conrad handles his grief after the death of his mother in season 2 is definitely caused by being the oldest sibling and the impacts that has had on his mental health growing up. We see how he again slips away into himself, unwilling to open up to those around him, ultimately costing him his relationship with Belly, which I definitely have thoughts on and will discuss in another video. But we see how Conrad has an unhealthy relationship with his thoughts and feelings, and how at this point in time all he's ever known is to not be a burden to those around him, to be the strong older sibling that is everyone else's shoulder to cry on. Some fans and casual viewers give Conrad a lot of slack for the way he behaved towards Belly in season 1, but from my perspective, his attitude in this season was only a reaction to everything going on around him that was out of his control. In the flashbacks, we see Conrad in a more light-hearted way. We see the Conrad that Belly fell in love with. Conrad before his mother's terminal illness, and before his father cheated on his mother. 2 events which would ultimately change anyone. Of course he is brooding in season 1, of course he is a bit snappy. He is in a constant state of grief that he can share with nobody. He is in his own personal hell. His mother isn't dead yet, but in the back of his head he knows the inevitable is coming. Deep down, he understands that she isn't going to get any better. Especially at that age, when you are in your early to mid-teens, these things feel even bigger than normal. It feels like a perfectly normal response to finding out your dad is a piece of shit and that your mother might die soon and is likely to never recover. All of the resentment and rage bubbling up inside of you is sure to spill out here and there. If anything, I think Conrad deserves some credit for how graciously he handled himself in season 1, despite literally everything. Safe to say, I love Conrad's glow up in season 3. The fact my boy is finally in therapy feels like he broke free from the shackles of season 1 and 2. He looks and seems so much more emotionally stable and mature. We see in this season how he really is growing into an adult, not just from the way he carries himself, but with the conversations he holds with those around him. For instance, in episode 5, when he opens up to Belly about how he was fired from the hospital, letting us see his weaknesses, his failures, it's such a big change for Conrad. Such a good example of his growth. He has learnt from his past that keeping it bottled up has pushed others away, especially Belly. He realises this isn't the life he wants for himself, and he makes the change. Not to mention what an utter husband he is trying to be with the way he is constantly fixing up the house. Like, can we talk about how Conrad always looks out for Belly? He goes wedding shopping with her, he notices when she is cold, he does what she wants even if she doesn't say anything or suggests that his help isn't needed. He provides that unspoken love, where Belly doesn't have to tell him what to do because he already knows her so well that she doesn't have to. It breaks my heart sometimes when I realise that this is yet another man written by a woman, and it is why Conrad can be so dreamy. I never really thought that Conrad was one that felt like he needed his father's approval, especially after learning of his father's affair, but it was nice to see this point become so clear in season 3. He wants to be nothing like his father, and he doesn't really care what his father thinks of him. It's rewarding to see Conrad's character growth and how far he has come. He feels secure enough in himself that he doesn't need external validation. The validation of his father isn't worth much, as that's not a man he'd want to grow up to be. Yes, Conrad does fully state to his own father he doesn't care what he thinks. However, we also see this rebellion in Conrad's other actions. How in season 2, Conrad had Laurel's back when Adam was shouting at her, and how Conrad has his own mind and ordered the cheapest main off the menu in season 3. He doesn't need to order what his father orders. I know I just rambled about how great it was that Conrad has really grown and matured, but can we take a moment to appreciate snarky and sassy Conrad? Because oh my god, the icon he is. I couldn't stop giggling and full on belly laughing when he was rage baiting Jeremiah in episode 1 or season 3. Then again, that was before the time jump, so fair play. I also cannot close this section off until we discuss the iconic Peach scene. This scene is so symbolic for how much Conrad loves Belly. Not even this scene, but the whole episode. Safe to say I have watched this episode 4 times now. It's such a beautiful episode, and Jenny Han needs to direct more episodes because this episode felt like such a love letter to Conrad. This episode perfectly encapsulates the feeling of being in love. We start this Peach scene with the two of them driving past a sign for peaches. Initially, Belly dismisses going for any as they have already passed the sign, almost as if it's a symbol for her and Conrad already passing their chance. But Conrad loops back around and heads for the peaches. 1, showing how deeply he understands Belly and how much he loves her and will do anything for her, and 2, it shows that their time isn't up yet. They can still turn back around. They go and eat a peach, well at least Belly does, and Conrad watches her in utter awe. Like, I've never seen a man look so down bad and in love. When eating the peaches though, Belly says, "I don't want to eat another one, cause there's no way that it can be this good." Again, you could say I'm reaching, but it's almost symbolic for how Belly is scared to go back to Conrad as she is afraid of change. That something else, something more, could be better. Yet Conrad buys her another peach, and what do we know? It's just as good, if not better. The song choices on this show are also top tier, we all know this already, but having Wild Horses play was legendary and iconic. Literally the perfect choice for this moment. It adds so much to the scene. It makes the scene feel even more impactful by having an old rock classic. It also makes Conrad look like an old heartthrob in a cowboy romance. I cannot believe though that Belly gaslights herself so much. Like, I know you know that you felt something in that moment. How could you not? You'd have to be dead to not feel the romantic tension between the two of them. Conrad's gentle wipe of Belly's face shows how caring and gentle he is with her. Also how he respects her boundaries and isn't trying to kiss her or do anything more. However, the wiping of the face was a very intimate moment between the two. I can't lie. This peach scene sort of reminds me of the hand flex moment with Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice. I love how episode 5 is completely from Conrad's perspective. We see how much Belly glows and shines from his perspective. She has never looked better. Conrad this season does struggle with being the eldest sibling still, and its ties go back to the pressures put on him by his parents, specifically Susanna. She tells Conrad to look after Jeremiah, to make sure he is okay. She asks this of him on her deathbed. Of course he can't say no. But we see how the pressure of being an older sibling falls onto him yet again. It doesn't seem to be the case that this was asked of Jeremiah. As a direct result of this, Conrad holds off pursuing Belly to look out for his younger brother, even if it means not getting what he wants in return. Conrad is a very strong character with very strong morals, and all of my respect goes towards him. The chemistry between Belly and Conrad is so effortless though. It never feels forced and it feels so natural. The two of them shine together on screen. Think about their guest bedroom scene. It's such an intimate moment that feels like I should turn away from. It feels like two people truly in love. Compare this to the scene in episode 7 with Belly and Jeremiah. It's giving Sabrina in Man-Child. It had me rolling my eyes wishing I could unsee those 3 minutes. So I guess this is the part where we talk about Jeremiah. Jeremiah. He's silly, goofy, quite irresponsible, and he is in a lot of debt. But let's wind it back to season 1. In the first season of The Summer I Turned Pretty, Jeremiah plays quite a big contrast to Conrad. We see how he is carefree, adventurous, and likes to party. He is always down for a night out and loves a drink. We definitely see how Jeremiah has been granted more freedom as the younger sibling, how he isn't weighed down by the responsibilities of being the oldest. Also on rewatch of season 1, it became even glaringly more clear to me how disinterested Jeremiah was in Belly, besides her glow up. Because the only time he seems to show any romantic interest in her is when he notices Conrad and Belly getting cozy out on the deck, and his interest in her seems to spark more from jealousy than a place of deep love and affection. This isn't to say that he can't be sweet and caring towards Belly, because he definitely is. However, as a woman sometimes you can't help but notice the stark difference between the way both the boys love Belly. Jeremiah focuses a lot on Belly's appearance and how physically hot she is, constantly telling her this. Whereas Conrad's love isn't so surface level and superficial. He notices all the little things about Belly and implements them into their day together. She doesn't have to ask for things to be done. On top of this, instead of calling her hot, he calls her things like beautiful and calling her his world. I know it may not seem like a big deal, but trust me, as a woman, there's a big difference between those two compliments. One of them feels like you're truly being seen and loved, whilst another can make you feel quite objectified sometimes. However, maybe this is a reflection on how Jeremiah feels about himself, that he doesn't have much to offer except for his charm and looks, for he has always felt like he comes second to Conrad, that he is inadequate and unlovable. This is only exaggerated when he finds out his own mother is ill, and Conrad knew all along. It's why he attacks him, not just out of anger and rage of his mother's illness, but once again being second to his own brother. It also links to why he hooks up with so many people, as he doesn't feel he will get attention from people in any other way. It may also be why Jeremiah comes off as cringy sometimes. He feels like he has to overcompensate to keep people around, sometimes having to be the bigger personality and people pleaser. For instance, the dynamic between Jeremiah and his father is the perfect example of this. Adam is constantly reminding Jeremiah how he is nothing in compared to Conrad, and that he is such a letdown. Obviously a very awful reminder to keep receiving from your own dad, so it is no surprise when Jeremiah is the kind of character that doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. He always wants to keep the peace. When in the car with Conrad and his father, Jeremiah can see the rising tension in Conrad and urges him to calm down, not wanting to escalate the situation, not wanting to upset his father as he is constantly striving for his approval. Or for instance when he joins his dad's company to try to impress him, or when he orders the exact same thing off the menu as his father. Jeremiah and Conrad are opposites. Conrad wants to be nothing like his father, he wants to be his own person, but Jeremiah believes that successful people look and act like his father. Therefore, he wants to mold himself into what he believes the ideal man is, which is very ironic all things considered. This behaviour is concerning though, considering history is repeating itself. Jeremiah has cheated on Belly, just like how Adam cheated on Susanna. Jeremiah cheats not once, but twice, and from episode 7 with how he laughs about it, we can see how even though Belly argues he hates himself for it, he clearly doesn't. Also, once isn't excusable, but twice? Twice? That's literally a choice. We also see how he becomes an ultimate pushover in terms of the wedding, because again he just strives for his father's approval. Therefore, this wedding turns more into his father's than Belly's. Nothing is the way she envisioned it, because it isn't her wedding. This kind of need for an approval from his father becomes slightly pathetic the older he gets though. He is consciously making choice after choice to choose the path his father is taking over Belly, putting more of a wedge between the two as the show goes on, even if Belly wants to gaslight herself into the fact that it's happening. Yes, I understand why Jeremiah is the way he is and why he wants his father's approval, but at this point in time, with what we know about Adam, one can't help to question why anyone would look up to this man. Yes, I know Jeremiah is not aware of the cheating, but Adam's still not the best man to look up to. So yes, Jeremiah does give me the ick, because even though he's becoming a grown-ass man, growing into his 20s, he still ultimately only wants his father's approval and a mirror-glazed chocolate cake. I also cannot stand how Jeremiah is okay with Belly not going to Paris. I just know Conrad would never let that happen. Such a big opportunity, such a pivotal moment in her life, and all Jeremiah could say was he doesn't want her to go either. It's so selfish on his part, especially considering he will be busy with work anyway. Yes, they may be getting married, or at least deluding themselves that they are, but you can still be your own people. Belly still should go out and go to Paris. Like, it kills me that she isn't going to Paris. Because Belly, get up. In relation to Jeremiah feeling second best to Conrad, I think this would perfectly explain his attraction to Belly. Not saying he doesn't love her for his own reasons, but this would also explain why he pursues Belly, especially after seeing her grow so close to Conrad. Because everyone knows she always had eyes for Conrad. So when Jeremiah saw the two of them getting even closer, it probably felt to him like one of the only people who didn't put him second or make him feel inadequate was being taken away from him. Therefore, if he could take her from Conrad and have her, then that would prove he wasn't second best, that he could also then win his father's approval. In episode 7 of season 3, we see how this still bothers Jeremiah in an exchange with Conrad. At the bar for his bachelor party, Jeremiah lets Conrad know he doesn't need to take care of him and Belly anymore, that they can do it themselves. Whilst at first this felt like a nice exchange, below the surface one could see the passive-aggressive way in which Jeremiah was talking to Conrad, basically telling him to back off. It wasn't the thank you Jeremiah was trying to disguise it as. It was Jeremiah's insecurities bubbling up once again. Personally, I'm not Team Jeremiah, which I think is very clear from this video. Yes, I can see where his actions stem from and why he may be the way he is. However, I don't respect how much he wants the approval of the man that cheated on his own mother. I don't respect that he cheated on Belly, and I don't respect how he doesn't have Belly's best interests at heart. He truly is a man-child. Belly Conklin. Oh, how this has turned into the summer I hate Belly. Especially after episode 7. At this point, she and Jeremiah deserve each other. Conrad can go and be free. Run away from everyone. However, we will be offering Belly some grace. Since this is a coming-of-age story, it kind of makes sense that Belly may sometimes feel like a bit of a self-insert character that doesn't completely hold much depth. That would be right as well, considering she is young and only starting to get to know herself. So that is why it is also completely deranged when, after learning that Jeremiah cheated on her, it only takes her 2 days to accept his proposal. It left everyone absolutely gobsmacked, absolutely baffled, wanting to throw my TV out the window. Because what? However, again, as she is so young, it also makes sense as to why she is so indecisive. One would argue perhaps she could be indecisive about men that aren't a part of the same family, but that's for another time. I think everyone knows that the only reason why Belly was so quick to say yes to Jeremiah was because of the scare they had with Stephen almost dying. It must have brought up a lot of feelings, especially so soon after Susanna's death. Therefore, it makes sense that she has clung to the closest person to her, even if he did betray her. Not saying I would put up with that, but this is Belly. Another problem with this period of her life is not only has Belly lost herself in her relationship with Jeremiah, constantly having to make life easier for him and constantly having to worry about him. Think about episode 7 and how when the glass is broke in the house, Jeremiah comes to Belly to clean it up, almost like she's his mother, whereas in the house, Conrad was helping her clean up. They were a team. But Belly also got an injury which made it unsuitable for her to play on her volleyball team. Yes, we barely saw her do this, however it was a big part of her personality, and losing this so young at such a pivotal part in her life definitely made her cling to Jeremiah even more so. He was almost the only stable thing she had at this point. In season 3 as well, there's definitely been a distinct lack of Belly's internal monologue, almost as if she's been silencing herself. In seasons 1 and 2, her commentary was a lot more common. We, the audience, knew more about what she was thinking. But I think Belly in season 3, going through so much all at once, is completely lost and confused within herself. So the lack of internal thoughts is reflective of her state of mind. It also may be reflective of how she is too scared to acknowledge the feelings she is having, as quite a few of them, especially recently, would be aimed towards Conrad. I myself haven't read the books, so I don't know if this show is doing a disservice to Belly, but episode 7 does not paint her in the best light. We get so many moments between her and Conrad, starting with her confronting him about convincing her mum to come to the wedding. I find it interesting as well how she doesn't even assume Jeremiah would have done this. She went straight to Conrad. Then we have the scene in the bar where Belly keeps getting flashbacks of Conrad. Completely against her will, these images take over her mind. She can't help but think about him. All of this leads to her confessing she never pictured the wedding she is having. She has only ever pictured Conrad. So with all of this in mind, audiences would think she would then be willing to open herself up to Conrad, but no, not at all. We find ourselves at this dang beach once again with an emotional gut punch once again. It is here that Conrad finally confesses his feelings for Belly, telling her he loves her, telling her to leave Jeremiah, don't marry him. I was screaming, crying and throwing up at this scene. It all comes crashing down though when Belly turns to Conrad and tells him he means nothing to her, that Jeremiah has always treated her better. And you can't help but think, is this girl for real? What spell is she under? Because how is Conrad's grief and forgetting a corsage worse than Jeremiah cheating on you? I get it, she is gaslighting herself, and I get it, this is symbolic of how Conrad, her first love, is way more intense than any of her feelings for Jeremiah. That what Conrad does is 10 times worse in her head because her feelings for him are so much more intense. Whereas when Jeremiah does something, it doesn't hurt as much because with him, she doesn't feel those fireworks that she does with Conrad. But yeah, this felt like a really hard moment for Belly to come back from. It just left a really sour taste in my mouth seeing how harshly she treats Conrad in comparison to Jeremiah. Like, my apologies, Conrad was emotionally unavailable during his mum's death. And I think a lot of people hate that the first time we see Conrad be this emotionally available and open this season, he is turned down in the worst and cruelest way possible. It felt like this scene undid all of the therapy he worked on, especially as the only reason he seems to confess his feelings for Belly is after learning that Jeremiah, the person he trusted to love and look after Belly, actually cheated on her, and isn't giving her the love Conrad thinks she deserves. However, like I said earlier, we do need to give Belly some grace. She too was grieving at this point in time. Obviously, it wouldn't have been as extreme as the grief Conrad and Jeremiah were feeling, but at the age they were, it's somewhat no surprise that her and Conrad broke up. Like, she was too young to emotionally support him and too lost in her own grief that her lashing out at Conrad and distancing herself was because he was doing the same. Some of Belly's behaviour can also be tied back to season 1 and the entire premise of this show. Season 1 literally takes place in the summer Belly turned pretty. To go from the kind of girl that was never given any attention from men to now getting random guys hitting on her and the two she has grown up with showing an interest in her, it's definitely clear how this could play with someone's head, how this could completely confuse someone and make them extremely indecisive. It's such a whiplash effect, and it must feel almost awkward to navigate at times. So I really want to give Belly some grace here because the internet does seem to be entirely against her, and I do understand where it's coming from. However, at the end of the day, she is also a woman in her early 20s trying to find out who she is. And if anything, this is the best time in her life to be making mistakes and learning from them. Does this mean I agree with everything she says or does? No, not at all. I am one of those viewers hitting my head against the wall at the end of episode 7, but I also understand where she is in her life. Ultimately, I think this show is definitely pointing towards Belly and Conrad ending up together. I would be completely surprised if they didn't. Considering everything that's been happening, Conrad opening up to Belly about his feelings, Belly slowly acknowledging her feelings for Conrad, Jeremiah not knocking back through the wall, and all of the symbolism that has been tied into the show, insinuating that Conrad and Belly will end up together. It seems inevitable at this point. So that is a little wrap up of my thoughts. Sorry it's a little all over the place. I just wanted to completely ramble about my thoughts on the recent episode and character dynamics. Let me know if you guys would like a more in-depth analysis of the episodes or themes you've seen come up in this show. I want to make more content around this show, and yeah, this was just a quick video to just get it out of my system. But if anyone would be interested in a more researched and well thought out video essay, then I'm down for that too. But I also can't wait for it. Let me know what you guys think, and I will hopefully see you some other time.